So, change of location here. I'll continue with the Arnold Patent. So in this tape, one of the things he talked about was that we create our own world, live our life a month as though that were true, and see how things would change. I did that, and I found quite an interesting change in the way I was looking at the world, realizing how much I had an input into what happened. And so he said, I want to teach you a simple three-step method. And the three-step was, number one, whatever's going on, whatever happens, step one is look at what I created. Step two is no judging. I'm not going to judge myself. I'm not going to judge you. No judging, no guilt, no shame, no judging. Step three is how do I want it to be different? Seems like a very simple three-step process, but if you start applying that to your life, you'll find some pretty interesting changes, because again, what it does, it gives you the power. When you start owning that you're responsible for everything that happens, it gives you the power. You're no longer the victim. You have the power. So if you don't like the way it is, how do I want it to be different? You have the power to affect it. So that was one of the big first wake-up calls I had. And then along, I think a little bit after that time, we started doing, I can't remember why we got into it, but my ex-wife Pam and I started taking a training in transactional analysis. It was I think it was a year-long training, because it took us some point in time to go through the training. And I'll use TA for short. So when we're learning transactional analysis, there's a lot of things to be said about it. What I'll do is just recap some of the things that still are with me now that I use every day in my life that I took away from that. So go back a little bit and talk about what happened for me. I actually took training in TA in a business application. So that was what I was going to do, use it in a business world.
Was it through your work or no?
No, the training wasn't, but I actually did teach transaction analysis at where I worked. I had to get permission from...
At that time you were an accountant for the government.
Right, but at noontime I would teach that class. I think we probably had, I don't know what it was, 8 to 10 sessions, so it would take maybe 3 or 4 weeks to go through. Maybe we'd meet twice a week, and so we'd learn about, the different things. There's a lot of pieces to it, the games people play. It talked about the different kinds of games we play, but before that it talks about the different ego states. So transaction analysis, basically, it boils down to the basis is the ego states that we're in. Eric Berne did a study. I don't know if it was a brand new study, but he really saw it in a different way. I think Freud had these ideas, the superego, ego, the id. That was somewhat of an idea about ego states. But in TA, we've identified 3 basic ego states: the parent, the adult, and the child. And then those ego states are broken down into subgroups. The parent ego state, broken down into 2, the firm parent and the nurturing parent. So there's 2 kinds of parents. But the negatives on those are the firm parent. If it's negative, it's the critical parent. And the nurturing parent, if it's negative, it's the rescuing parent. So those are things, and I'll talk about that later and amplify on that. The adult, one of the things you can say about how to identify the adult is the one that just the observer. Like, I'm trying to think the guy who was always in, I can't think of his name, but he was always he would just told the facts, just the facts. Whatever the observation is. The observation would be, right now it's 70 degrees in the room. That's an observation, because that can be verified by...
So you mean like a reporter or something that's supposed to be as objective as possible?
Objective, yes, objective. If I said, oh, it's too cold and I'm freezing and I'm shaking and all this, it starts to move into a different place. That's probably coming from the parent ego states or the child. And that's the third one. There's two childs. There's a natural child and the adapted child. The adapted child is what we all pretty much are trained when we're little to be. We're adapted. You know, our parents teach us to be quiet in certain situations, to eat our food in a certain way, all the way that we're adapted to do what our parents want us to do. The natural child is the child that would be the child if the adapted child wasn't present. The child would just do whatever it wanted. It'd eat whatever it would want. It would go play. It would do whatever was fun or natural for the child. So those are basically, and those break down even further. If you really got into transactional analysis, you'd find there's a lot more depth. So I'm just wanting to cover what really worked mostly for me. I think it was helpful for me to actually teach it, because anytime you teach anything, that's where you learn it the best. So that was helpful. I think I taught 3 or 4 classes over a period of about a year, which I enjoyed doing. It helped me to get out of my stage fright type of thing where you're, you know. But now in my life, what happened, one of the most useful things from that was later on, a man by the name of Dr. Steve Karpman took the idea of the games people play, and if you read the book Games People Play, you'll find there's all kinds of games, you know, wooden leg and poor me, and there's a lot of different things that we can put on as a game.
One I remember from being a kid is Niggy Sob.
Yeah, Niggy Sob.
Now I got you, you son of a bitch.
Yeah,
right?
That's another one. Yeah. But what Steve Karpman was able to do was simplify it in a way that I could use it then every day. And what he found out, all games have 3 things in common. There's 3 roles played in all games. There's the victim, the persecutor, and the rescuer. So one of the ways you can find out if you're in a game is which one of those stages are you in. And what happens in a game, here's one way to identify a game. It's when there's transactions. Again, remember we're talking about transactional analysis. When there's transactions between people, and at the end of it, there's some kind of a negative feeling someplace in your gut or someplace where you're like, you know, you just don't feel good about it. You're not having a rapport. You're not enjoying being in that situation with the other person. So that's a way you can identify when you're in a game. Another clue is if you're in a game, you don't know you're in a game. As soon as you know you're in a game, then there's things you can do different. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So that's part of how you define a game. People don't know they're in a game. They end up feeling negative in a situation. And there's also levels of games. There's 1st, 2nd, 3rd degree games. So the 1st degree games are the kind of games we play all the time out in public with people. You know, you hear guys jousting each other, calling each other silly things, and kind of laughing about it, but one person's always trying to up the other person. That's a kind of a game, because you got the persecutor, you got the victim. But another way to identify as the games is they go round and round and round, because first the person could be the persecutor, and then they're the victim, and then they're the rescuer. They go round and round. So an example of this, a short example would be, Mom just buys a green shirt for the son, brings it home, she's proud, gives the son the shirt, and the son says, Mom, you know I hate green shirts. Why'd you do that for me? You know, in an ugly voice. Right then, before I go there, what is the mother possibly being? Rescuer, persecutor, or victim? Probably it could be. It may not be in this situation to start off. Could be a rescuer. She's finding a shirt for her son. Maybe he's capable of finding his own shirt. The son then becomes the persecutor, persecuting his mom. Why'd you do that for? I don't like those. At that moment, the dad walks in from work, and here's the son. Tommy, you go upstairs right now. You don't talk to your mother like that. Okay? Is the husband being, what role's the husband being?
Rescuer.
rescuer, you're rescuing the mom, and what's he doing to the son? Persecuting. What's the son being?
Victim.
Okay. So it goes round and round. Now, after dinner, he has to go up. The son goes upstairs with that dinner. A little bit later, the mom tiptoes up the stairs with a plate of food. Now what's the mother being?
Rescuer.
And the son's?
Well, we don't know.
The victim.
Okay.
Probably the victim. That's an example of the games we play every day. And if you really become aware of them, you'll see that you can be in those roles. So one of the ways to identify the rescuer game, there are 3 ways to see if you're in a rescue game or you're being the rescuer. Number 1, you're doing something you don't really want to do. You're doing something for somebody else they can do for themselves. And I can't remember the third one right now, but there's another one. Can you rescue me here? Probably not. Okay.
I don't remember the third one.
Anyway, so those are some of the ways that you can identify when you're in a game. So, okay, what's the value of doing that? Well, there's several values. Number 1, you're not in those kind of situations where you're feeling bad, the other person's feeling bad, and also you're staying out of the game. So I'll go back to the 3 levels of the games. The first game's the one that we all can play in public. The second game are games that you wouldn't probably play in public, like with your spouse. You might talk to each other in ways that you would never talk to each other that way when you're with friends or family. Those are considered more second-degree games. Those games you play out of awareness of the general public, let's say. The third-degree game is the vicious ones, and they usually end up in divorce court or the morgue. So those are, you can see how games can end up in, nations. We kill each other. And so those end up in the morgue. Those are games we play. One person says something and derogatory to the next, blah, blah, blah. I see right now in our politics, there's a lot of that going on, a lot of gamemanship, you might say, persecuting the victims. It's just, that's happening all the time, unfortunately. So, the next thing is, how do I, I realize I'm in a game, how do I stay out of the game? So this is the value of, one of the biggest values of transactional analysis for me is, how do I stay out of a game when I realize I'm in a game? So number 1, when you realize you're in a game and you keep the game going, it's no longer a game. And you keep it going, then you're manipulating. It changes because you're doing it for some reason, devious reason maybe, probably of some kind. So when you decide, though, I'm playing a game, I don't want this, it's not really valuing myself, I'm not valuing the other person, I'm doing pain to them and myself, and this is not the place I want to be, I'm going to stop this game. So one of the ways is to give a different response. Because in TA, one of the things about TA is looking at the different ego states talking to each other. Like the parent ego state will talk to the child ego state. So what they talk about is when those vectors intersect, like if the parent talks to the child, if the critical parent, who in this case, is a persecutor, talks to the adapted child, who is the victim, and says, Johnny, you get in there and clean your room, in that kind of a persecutor voice. And Johnny goes, I don't want to do that and you can't make me. So that's Johnny's persecutor voice talking back to the mom, and those vectors are crossing between the 2 ego states. So that's a little bit more in-depth into how transactional analysis actually works, So what you want to do, one of the ways to stay out of a game is stop those lines from crossing. So you might give a different response. So a good example actually happened with Adam when he was a kid. He came to me and he said, Dad, I don't know, the kids at school all make fun of me. I don't like it. Is there anything I can do about it? And I said, at the time I was reading another book that really helped me a lot. The name of the book was When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. Had some really neat things, and it was a book about how not to be manipulated. And one of the strategies in that book, which I really like, was was agree in principle. So that's giving a different response to stay out of the game. So Adam comes to me and says, Dad, they're making fun of the way I'm dressing, maybe. My shirt tail's out. And they're making fun of me. And I said, well, let's try that agree in principle. Yeah, and to say, Adam, your shirt tail's out. Yeah, yes, isn't that funny? Or Adam, your hair, you need to comb your hair. Yeah, I sure do, don't I? So it's kind of like a keto. There's no fight going on. You're agreeing. You're given the unexpected response. So you're not in the game where it's, Adam, your shirt tail's out. Oh, I don't care. Shut up. So again, the transactions are crossing. Again, you're not living in a peaceful place. You're fighting. It's the difference between. So that's one of the examples of staying out of a game, is giving an unexpected response. So there's a number of others, but I think that's one of the big ones. So we'll move on from there.
Okay.
And so I might come back and say a little bit more about Tia a little bit down the line. I'm trying to think then what came next in as far as some of the things that have really been helpful to me.
I remember this one too, this book. This is another TA, right?
Yeah, I'm okay, you're okay.
It's another TA
Yeah.
book, right? So I think that middle circle is child, right?
No, the middle one's the adult.
The middle one's the adult.
Top's parent, adult, and child. And part of the
You
deal...
can see the circles in this book too, like the...
Yeah, games
Yeah.
people play. So I will say, since you brought that up, I'm okay, you're okay. So that book's interesting because part of the problem I'm having now is I have other modalities that I'll talk about later that fit into this, and one of them is the idea of power over versus power with or power under. So when you're in a I'm okay, you're okay position, we're in a power with. We will work together, we're both okay, we'll get the job done, would be one example. Power over would be I'm okay, you're not okay, which means you better do what I want, or this country better do this, or whatever. I mean, between people, between countries, it all fits. Where the power over, power under. So the I'm okay, you're okay place is known as the get on with it. We're going to keep going, but when I'm in a I'm okay, you're not okay place, things get stopped and we don't make progress. Or I'm not okay, you're not okay. That's there's various variations of that. Again, that book goes into a very interesting concept of realizing, again, I'm not okay, I'm feeling like the victim, or you're not okay, I'm being the persecutor. Another way of seeing that I'm in the game. So it all fits together the more you get into it.